Welcome, welcome. Today is going to be short and sweet. I'm not feeling that great. I'm sick, but being sick caused me to sit down and do nothing. And since I had to sit down and do nothing, I decided to finish off the second book of the Zion Chronicles series, A Daughter of Zion, that I said I was finishing like way long ago, feels like. Anyway, it was a little slow going for me. This is the book. They've got new covers now, so you'll probably recognize it by something else if you're in it. You know, I'm interested to know what those of you who've read this think of the second one, and about the characters especially. In my last review of the Zion Chronicles, I can't talk because I'm sick. I was saying that I felt like the characters were a little bit flat. I suppose in some ways that carried over, but not entirely. I mean, I feel like I know them better by the second book. I feel like I know Moshe, silly, Moshe, and Rachel and Leah and David. They're all kind of in there, and the uncle, and you know who's Luke something. He's a British officer. I just read it, but I can't remember his name. His last name. So I really like his character. Like, I like his character a lot. I hope he becomes like more of a main character in some of the future books. But I would say as a whole, I feel like I know the characters pretty well, except again when it comes to Rachel and Moshe. I already went into it in the last video, but basically I just feel that the chemistry between them, there wasn't enough in the book seen for that chemistry between them for me to feel warranted. Like, he kind of love at first sight with him, I suppose, and she gets all Twitter-pated when she's around him, but there were really no scenes that intimately brought them together, no conversations that really linked them. It was just sort of, he had feelings for her and she had feelings for him, and everything sort of happened off, I guess it was a movie, off screen or off page for the book. And so what happens is that Rachel ends up in the old city, and Moshe is not inside Jerusalem, or he's outside of the city. And so they've been sending notes in a little lipstick case that they put in taped inside the dog's ear, and they were sending the dog back and forth, shawl. This is probably very convoluted, and I apologize if I'm making no sense. Moshe had to get in the city. He wanted to go to her, and I think there were other reasons he wanted to get in besides just her. I just can't recall them at the moment, because from the moment I read that chapter to the moment I picked up was like weeks, and I just didn't remember why he had to get in. And I'm sick again. Anyway, so sneeze. Okay. So I don't remember why he had to get in, but he did. And the only way to get in was these secret tunnels that went beneath the city, and it was kind of like a maze and a honeycomb of twists and turns. And the old rabbi that was with him outside had given him sort of this map of the way in, and he was joined by Luke, the British officer, and they made it in. So he had sent ahead of time the dog with a key and a note, like telling Rachel, please meet us over at this specific spot in one of the buildings, and you need to get to the grate. It's this old grate, and the key will unlock it so that he can actually make it into the old city once he makes it that far. And there were many calamitous events that rose up to sort of stop this from happening and whatnot. Okay, now if I can remember what I said, he had sent this note ahead saying, remember, you are loved. And she was just overcome with the fact that, oh my gosh, he loved her. Now, if I had a crush on someone or loved them but had no sort of proof that they love me back, they've never told me they love me, we've never had any like super meaningful conversations, I sort of suspected him of loving me back because Ehud had told her, oh, you know he loves you, but she sort of didn't really believe it. But then if in the note all I got was, remember you are loved, that could mean by a whole host of people that are outside with him. Leah loved her. David Meyer cared about what happened to her. Her grandfather, her brother, they were all out there with Moshe. And so to say, remember you are loved, it's kind of jumping to conclusions to assume like, remember you are loved means I'm in love with you. Like, yeah, you want to interpret it that way, but I don't think it's very succinct. I mean, he could have said, I love you, Anyway, I mean, this series is wonderful. It's really, really a good series. It's a historical series, and it's very much focused on the time period and what's happening with Israel. Well, and Israel's not even a state at the time. So I'm really only critiquing this little part based on the romance, and again, that's not the main genre that I would put this into. I would not say this is a romance book. It's a historical, themed book with romance in it. Like, don't judge the entire series based off of this little bit that I find disappointing. Because even I know this is not the main bit of the series. So anyway, and so then when he gets to her, she says, "Oh, Mushy," she cried. "Oh, you came just as you promised." And he says, "Never again will we be apart, my love, never." So that bugs me too, when there have been no words of love between you, no physical contact, no declarations of any kind, and then the first time they see you and he's rescuing you, he's like, "Oh, my love." Like, well, work up to it a bit. Like, I don't know. And then the last part, I have to blow my nose. On a different note, not having anything to do with the romance, everything basically made sense to me in the book except for them crawling through the tunnels underneath the city. Now, I know I don't know. I assume this is something historical. Moshe and Moshe and Luke crawling through these tunnels, and they're describing them. It was a description that I just couldn't sort of wrap my brain around. I couldn't picture it in my mind. Sort of not. Either it was tight or it wasn't, or it was so, I don't know. Anyway, and then also, I'm coming off of the end of this is a side note, the Princess of Mars series by Edward Rice Burroughs, and I just finished up the third audiobook of that one in between this. And the character, you'll know what I'm talking about in a minute. The character of John Carter is incredibly noble, and like, he would rather die than abandon anybody. The series has him looking for his wife and trying to get her back because she's been captured, but even in the pursuit of his wife, he figures if he fails to get her back because he dies, he would still rather die with his honor, saving those who were with him, than to abandon them in pursuit of his wife, because they were helping him. So oftentimes he got separated, or someone was in a jail cell and he got out but they didn't, and he had to go back for them. Like, the easier thing would have been to go rescue his wife from there, but he always went back into danger to go back for the person that he had planned to escape with in the first place, because he wouldn't leave them there. Okay, so now I'm going to jump back to the story. They're going through this tunnel. The ground gives way beneath them. Luke falls kind of down this shaft while he's holding on to the side, and Moshe throws him a rope, but it's like laying over his hands, and he kind of gets it under one finger, and the ground gives way again, and he had been like, grab the rope, hoping he'd be dangling and swinging. The book said that when Moshe came up to the pit to get to Luke, that the little pebbles rolling in didn't make a sound when they fell, like suggesting that the pit was really, really deep. And so when another sort of cave-in happened and Luke fell, he didn't get the rope in time, I guess, and he fell in, and all the rubble sort of fell around him, and it seemed like he was a little bit buried, I don't know how. And then also Moshe's backpack fell in when Moshe had to sort of like thrust himself backwards away from the hole, and so Luke was down there with the backpack and his hand was sort of lifeless. So anyway, Moshe is grieved because he thinks his friend is dead, but he gets up and sort of has to skirt around the edge of this hole and kind of barely makes it to the other side to leave. But so coming out of this John Carter scenario where you're just faced with this really noble and heroic character, I felt like, and I know it's a little bit more adventure fiction, but still, still, he never would have turned his back on a friend. And I felt like Moshe gave up on Luke way too fast. Like, they couldn't make a noise because any little bit of a noise, like talking or even barely whispering, seemed to be sort of setting off these tremors and further sort of rocks falling and the ground shaking. And so he had to be quiet, but he could have taken some like smaller pebbles and like, you know, popped his friend on the head. Like, hey, wake up, just to find out if he really was dead. Or at the very least, wait 5, 10, 15 minutes to see if he was just unconscious and came to. How would he get him out? I don't know. The rope was still tied to something up at the top. Maybe he could have shimmied down to Luke and then wrapped it around, even if he thought he was dead, even if. Wrapped it around his, you know, torso and then crawled out himself and then pull Luke out and set him down, try to revive him, resuscitate. I just felt like him leaving him there just really like set off a little bit of like angst in me. And I know this is on a more realistic note than maybe adventure fiction is, but still, John Carter's his character was such that he didn't give up on people until he knew there was nothing else he could do. He would not, if leaving a comrade meant help for that comrade and there was only one way to get him help and you couldn't supply it, yes, I get it. But I did not feel like Moshe exhausted all of his options to try to help Luke. Now he went on. Now he might have gone on in the tunnel with the thought that he was going to send someone back, that he was going to come back and retrieve the body if nothing else, or to see if he was okay. That it just never went down that path because I don't want to spoil it, but Luke doesn't die. He finds a way out, and then it becomes very advantageous to Moshe at a certain point in the drama. But then I was a little irritated at it, I have to say. But here, so then, real quick, because I can't think, what do I want to say? So then, once this drama is over and they all make it out, spoiler, they all make it out, this happens. Luke goes back. He goes back. How does he get back? This is the question that then bugged me. Luke had been uninvited on this little expedition in the first place. He had joined Moshe to help him because he knew he needed help. Moshe tried to send him away, saying, no, this is dangerous. Luke said, no, I'm coming with you. But then halfway through this trip underground, he's like, you know, I got to get back in the morning because I have to get back to my CO. They don't know I'm gone. You know, they're going to say I went AWOL. He just expected to help him in and go out. He didn't know how precarious this journey was going to be. He didn't know what he was getting himself into. So anyway, sort of unsurprising when they are done with all of the drama and what's going on, Luke goes back, and the book says this. Ehud says, this is when they're all back through the tunnel, and anyway, Ehud's talking to Moshe, and he says, and Captain Thomas as well, I think. I never believed I might have good to speak of a Gentile, but oi, this man is a gonstermacher. I think it probably has like some guttural throat sound that I'd be really good at right now, but I don't know how to pronounce it. Then he says, I am glad he is on our side. He must be back in the new city by now, Moshe gazed toward the wall. God bless him. He'll have a time explaining the condition of his face to the CO. I'm sure his nose was broken at the very least, and his eyes almost swollen shut. Okay, so the only way into the city, they had decided, was through these tunnels because everything else was so heavily guarded and no one was being allowed in or out. It's like an earthquake. Anyway, and so the only way out that I can assume Luke Thomas went was back out through the tunnels. But the tunnels were super precarious and super twisty, and they had marked their ways with like chalk and rope and different things like that. But he had like, they were dark if he had his flashlight, but other than that, it was like pitch black. And so there was this place where they had like muck, like sewage, like this big pit of sewage, because they were going in through a sewer system too. And then there was like an 18-inch like little ledge that they had to like, that might have even been a different 18-inch ledge. Anyway, they had to go on this edge, and there was like handholds, and like if they had fallen in, they probably would have died. And there was all these rats, and the only way they had gotten away from the rats is by killing one, and the other one sort of converged on that rat and was killing it, and they sort of blocked the tunnel off with those rats with some rocks. But there were still rats around, and they were big. Like one of them they described as like cat size, that had been living down in here. I don't know how they get cat size if there's not much to eat, unless they like commonly eat each other. That might be like a National Geographic thing to look up. Did they let him, Luke Thomas, go back alone through these tunnels with a broken nose and swollen eyes, and having fallen down into a pit and been knocked out? Like, who took him back? I want to know. Anyway, I wanted to know that he was safe. That was very important to me. There was no closure there. But again, don't let my criticisms of this stop you from reading the series. I feel bad when I do this and then I say, but still read the book. But I think you should read the book, because like I said before, I come at this from a predominantly romance genre in my head. Everything should have romance in it as far as I'm concerned, because I just like it that way. I like it. But I know that this is not the main thrust of this series, so I have little criticisms of the romantic element, but I also know that that is not the main gist of the story. Hold on. And I do think that it's okay to really like a story and still have some criticisms of it, but because besides this, I really didn't have any. Everything else was fine. For some reason, this was I just didn't understand what was going on or picture it properly in my head. Now, I am sick, again, for the third time. I'm using that as a really big excuse, so maybe I'm just a little cloudy. Still, read the book. And I have a feeling that the romance won't be cleared up for me any further in the third book. It's called A Light in Zion. I feel like I might have read this one because there was a wedding that I vaguely remember between Moshe and Rachel. Oh, spoiler. It shouldn't be a spoiler. When they're in love, they get married. Okay. That's all I remember. So I know that it probably is in this book, which I will read because I enjoy this series very much. I do. And I really like Rachel and I really like Moshe, so I'm sure I'm going to like them together. I'll just pretend like there was more substance to the relationship than there was. That's all. I don't have anything else to say. I don't feel good. Tell me what you think of this series. If you have read this series, tell me if any of the romantic element bothered you at all. Tell me if you understood the tunnels beneath Jerusalem, and if it was just my cloudy brain that kept me from understanding what was happening, or if you felt there were certain plot holes or little things that were not quite right. Yeah, leave those in the comments. Other than that, have a great day. I'll have new reviews coming up soon, and if you don't get these books, you can always get mine. Stick my name on Amazon and you'll be able to find them. All right, have a great day, you guys. I'm going to bed now.